Welcome back to the journey into Forever is the Soul. This week we are going to look at chapter 10 called Beyond the Fragmentation. And the subtext or subtitle for this week is The Acceptance of One's Death is Not Dissimilar to the Acceptance of One's Life. So that's a very thought-provoking subtitle, and because we recorded this backwards, I know what Andrew's going to speak about today, and I'm sure that you will find it interesting. So here we go with chapter 10. Enjoy.
Welcome back to the Forever Journey. Today we're going to talk about chapter 10. There's 21 chapters in this book, and this will be the 10th video. And you know what? It's been fun to do these things, and I really appreciate that people are actually watching them. I could encourage more comments and more feedback. That would be good, but I don't want to put any pressure on anyone. Chapter 10, the title is Beyond Fragmentation. And the subtitle, or the little philosophical jibber-jabber that I wrote, is The Acceptance of One's Death is Not Dissimilar to the Acceptance of One's Life. I will repeat that. The acceptance of one's death is not dissimilar to the acceptance of one's life. What do I mean by that? Beyond fragmentation. So what is fragmentation? Fragmentation is something's broken. And from my understanding, from my philosophy, from the feelings that I experienced while writing the book, is that my consciousness, this here and now that I exist within, and I emphasize here and now, I am here and I am now. And what I'm experiencing is consciousness. Now, as I've said before, I believe that we share our consciousness with our souls, and beyond our souls, I believe we share our consciousness with other people. Everybody influences everybody. So if we're interacting with somebody, they're taking our consciousness to a different place. Even as I express these words and move my hands and do whatever it is I do, I'm taking your consciousness with me. Even when I slow down a little bit, and you might start to think about what I'm saying, well, that influence, that external bit of information that came at you took your consciousness somewhere else, to wherever I directed you to go. I like green. To say the word green, just to say green, evokes within you a whole series of events that are taking place within your being on a physiological level, where there's all these associations taking place in response to just something as simple as the word green. So when you fire out a whole bunch of information on many different levels, then your brain is doing all kinds of things in order to bring whatever is being fired at you into a consciousness. Okay? The other thing that I've said often is that I believe that I share my consciousness with my soul. Now this is a choice, and as I've talked about, it's an algorithm. It's a series of algorithms that have been transposed into my brain throughout the duration of this life that has all kind of accumulated into this sort of philosophical understanding that I call a construct. It's a philosophical understanding that's derived from all these algorithms, past life experiences, all coming into this moment in which I exist, where my perception of reality can only transpose itself into being through consciousness, through the brain bringing that into this experience that I'm having right now, which is a conscious experience. There's another level to this, which I call cognition. So there's consciousness, and then there's being aware that you're conscious, or cognitive. I've also used the term witness, where I say the witness is able to oversee everything that's going on in who you are as a person. And from that perspective, it can help you modulate or shift your orientation or your perception. So we'll go back to green, and for 1/1000th of a second, green occupied your consciousness. Now, if you don't like green, and you start to wind up on, I don't like green, so I could tell you to go away, I don't want to talk to you, rejection, that's going to evoke all kinds of algorithms, okay? what I'm really talking about here is fragmentation. Okay? If I take you to green and you don't like green and you start to think about green, well, then green is now occupying your consciousness. That doesn't have to be so. You can look at green and go, well, he likes green, but I don't like green. But through the witness, you can change green to blue if you want to. You can do whatever you want once you recognize that there's no separation, if you will, or fragmentation between levels of consciousness, right? So it's almost like you go into the triad system, subconscious. Well, good luck with that. There's just billions of bits and pieces of information in there that are all ready to synapse as soon as the stimulus comes at them. And that's going to fire up whatever it is into consciousness. But when you get to a point within yourself, and that's what's sort of happening in the story, the characters are getting to a point where they're recognizing that the veil that creates the blocks that inhibit us from seeing through the eyes of the witness is dropping. They're not seeing it that way anymore. Their whole perception of reality is shifting. So the egocentricity of who they were within their personalities, egocentricity is derived from their life experience algorithms into the construct that became the personality that they were, is all starting to assimilate into this much bigger consciousness, which in our human form I call the witness. So when I say that where to go, chapter 10, it's 105. I already looked it up, so I can just go to 105 here. Just give me a second. 105, where are you? 105. The acceptance of one's death is not dissimilar to the acceptance of one's life. What I mean by that is that I accept purely on a biological level that I have a finite period of time allocated to me to be this person called Andrew, and that I will die. So I live with the premise and the understanding that I will die. I've built constructs, as religions do, as various different disciplines do, that help us navigate and cope with the whole idea that, geez, I'm cognitive that I'm going to die. That sucks. Or does it? You know? And I think what the reference here is not dissimilar to the acceptance of one's death is not dissimilar to the acceptance of one's life. So if I have an allocated period of time on this plane as Andrew, and I've built constructs that give me the idea that I can see through two dimensions, one of which is purely biological, ego, green, oh yeah, okay, back to green again, and the witnessing green, then I can oscillate between those two different frequencies. So it's like a lens. Which lens do I want to look through? Because I said green, and now I see that as a victimization of myself, and I feel frustrated because that person called me green. I can wander around and spend as much time in that consciousness as I like. There's free will. You know, I can say whatever I want to say. I can say whatever I want to say to myself and feel victimized if I want to. So when you start to recognize that we're so hardwired into neurological responses that often lead us into more of a distancing of self from self, and that the whole construct as to what is self beyond self isn't necessarily well woven into our culture, into our ideas as to what it is to be human, what it is to be spiritually human, then that does facilitate a fragmentation. So we end up bouncing around an awful lot, sort of kind of maybe perhaps I'll go this way, sort of maybe kind of perhaps I'll go that way. It's indecisive, it's not defined. And I don't know, for my own journey, even as a writer, the criticism that I bestowed upon myself as I tried to work through this book and try to understand what I was writing and feel connected to it and tell a story that would, you know, offer people different insights into themselves through these metaphors of disincarnate souls that I'm writing about, I was trying to, in a way, defragmentize myself, to put something solid together that actually made sense to me as a writer, that took me on a journey, even though I often fought and kicked and screamed along the way because it wasn't going fast enough, or I'm not going to rewrite that again, and all these stupid things that go on in her head because I didn't like that shade of green. It brings you back to what is wholeness. And to me, wholeness is a physical, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual alignment that empowers me to see life through the inevitability of life itself, allocated period of time, and what do I want to do with that? And as I've said before, most of my focus at this point, I am 60, so I have some life experience behind me. I'm trusting that I've lived more life in the past than I will in the future, at least in this form, that what I can do now is contribute. I can reach out and I can contribute images and visions and books and so on that are relevant to my children's children's children. So my whole focal point of what is life, which then really helps me not fragment, because, sometimes I'll wake up and go, what am I going to do today? And all of a sudden I'll find all kinds of ego chatter that takes me into all kinds of different fragmentations. And through the witness, I can quickly correct that and go, no, we're not going to do that. I can say that I've probably owned 65 cars, maybe even more. Okay, I don't know why. It was just a dopamine feed. It was fun. It was impulsive. I'd get frustrated with something, or I'd be stuck somewhere in my own thoughts, and I'd want some dopamine, so I'd go out and I'd negotiate and I'd get another car. And it's like I have no desire to have another car at this point in my life. It's ridiculous how much time and energy that I've used in my lifetime to distract myself, fragment myself from what in the core of my being I've always felt. So what happens in this chapter, without giving it away, is that there's a lot of integration taking place between the characters as the veil begins to drop. And from the metaphors I'm speaking through now, they're recognizing the egocentricities and how they were confined within those belief structures based on the algorithms transposed to them into them throughout their life. And now all those algorithms, because their biological nature, are beginning to dissipate, and they're getting a really big picture of what they are beyond their egocentricity. And it takes them to a place, in a way, of delight, where the feeling of love and the feeling of purpose and reason for the original incarnation in the first place starts to become part of the sensibility that they're feeling within themselves, which sets up part 2 of the book. So chapter 9 and 10 are really transitional chapters that lead to the following 11 chapters that then start to articulate what is it to live through life with truly a witness that you're in coherence with, or within a relationship with. So this is kind of my thoughts on chapter 10. Fragmentation is a very biological thing. I'm going here, no, I'm going here, no, I'm going here, no, I love that person, no, I don't love that person anymore, too much green, and we bounce all over the place. Through the witness, we can correct the bouncing, and we can live in a coherence that stabilizes who we are, which then neurologically builds the neurons that fire together, wire together. We build the stability constructs within ourselves to be able to stay within a consciousness of our choosing, rather than a consciousness that's being directed by all kinds of reactions to external or internal thought. So those are my thoughts. Thank you for coming along, and I'm hoping you're enjoying this journey. The fact that people are watching must mean they're getting something or enjoying it. But, I'm begging now, send some comments. It would be fun to hear some feedback. A few of you have, and a few are sending me things through Messenger, which I appreciate. That's really cool. And let's realize that we're all in this together. There's a lot of changes going on in this planet right now, and I think one of the biggest changes, at least for me, has been an awakening. I know who Andrew is, but I'm beginning to have a real clear sense as to what my soul is. And I don't think my soul, or the energy that runs through me, is a whole lot different than the energy that runs through you. Thanks for coming along. Enjoy your day.